Hello, welcome to WG Content's Tips in 10 Minutes. Today we have a very special guest with us, Diane Hammons. She's our Director of Digital Engagement. She's been with us for a number of years, but has just recently moved into this role, which is a really big job, as anything that has to do with IT technology and digital applications is always a big job. Why don't you talk a little bit about what you do with us today?
Yeah, so Director of Digital Engagement, I love that word engagement, and especially what that means for WG content, because it's about how we as a team interact with technology. It's not just about buying software and training.
Right.
It's really about how we use it, how it
Mhm.
changes the way we work, and vice versa. Sometimes it's not the answer.
Yeah, yeah. And I think how you've been able to think about digital engagement internally for our operations and our business and how we, run things, but also externally, how are we delivering the best experience for our clients? So the reason that I invited Diane to our Tips in 10 Minutes is she came and met with our leadership team last week. And one of the things that she's doing here is really spearheading all things AI. And we don't need an introduction on AI. We certainly spend a lot of time thinking about it, working it, iterating it, testing it. I think in our industry, of course, we spend a lot more time talking about it as it relates to content creation. And I know that's part of what you're doing. But one of the things I really appreciated about what you shared was really just from a business perspective. What are some of the tools and like processes and things that we can do to be smarter and more efficient and profitable or whatever those things may be? And you really described it as change management. So talk to us a little bit about, I think you have some really good tips in there about how you can help the idea of adopting these tools to improve business. How have you been able to make that sort of very big thing a little bit smaller? Sort of what are some of the steps that you took initially to get this going?
Yeah, you're right. It's such a broad topic that you really need to narrow in so you don't
Mhm.
overwhelm yourself. You can kind of forever be spinning your wheels trying to know where to get started. So for me, it was identifying a few, credible sources, what I want to read and keep up on every day, what will give me a good running on
Mhm.
hot topics of the day and help me understand some of the terminology. You also need to find your community.
Yeah.
It's this is new for all of us, really, and it continues to iterate daily.
Mhm.
So, you need that community that also has their ear and wind and, can give you ideas of this is what's working for me. And then you need, you need peers, you need others who are interested and passionate and enthusiastic also to help you explore because you can't do it all yourself. And you
Yeah.
should. You
Yeah.
shouldn't. So, let's start with those credible sources. I mean, for me personally, yeah, the hustle is it's a snippet format
Okay.
newsletter. So I love
Yeah.
that if nothing time to read only small things, it gives it to me in those sound bites. And it always covers business and tech topics. So inevitably that's going to
Okay.
cover AI. The deep view is another one. It's a little down and dirty. It's kind of full of
Mhm.
sponsored links, but it's all AI all the
Mhm.
time.
Okay.
I'll surely get highlights about things like the EU and just what kind of software is out there. Fast Company and TechCrunch for longer form. And then something I've discovered lately is Creativity Squared. It's a newsletter and podcast series founded by Helen Todd, and she splits her time between Cincinnati and New York, and that kind of takes me to that second point of community. So Helen Todd is part of the community of AI enthusiasts here in the Cincinnati area. And I can't stress enough how important it is to find that in your
Mm.
area. Don't be afraid to look for those local conferences or meetups because that's where you get to talk to not only, like in our industry marketers, but also business leaders, developers, and that's where you learn like what's working, what's not, what's new, what
Mhm.
what to watch out for, what prompt is working for someone. What are
And you
people's
realize probably that you're not alone, I mean, in terms of like
absolutely.
just the feeling of keeping up with all of it and what do I do and where do I go and what's next. And so that camaraderie, I'm sure,
Oh
is
my
very
gosh.
important too.
Absolutely. And it really is helpful if you feel overwhelmed. You go and you realize, okay, I'm not the only one. We're all just trying
Hmm.
to figure this out. And there's a
Hmm.
great community component to that. Um, So, from there, I mentioned then you also need that team. You can't explore all the things maybe you want to explore, and you
Mhm.
shouldn't do it alone because you need other perspectives. So that's what we did here at WG Content. We have a group we
Yeah,
call AI Pathfinders,
I
and
love that.
yeah, and that's what we are. We're finding our path.
Yeah,
Or jumping off the path if it doesn't
yeah,
feel like it's a fit for us. But it's a great group of people who
yeah.
volunteered. So they're
Mhm.
people they don't necessarily know any more, or maybe some do,
Yeah,
some know less about AI than I've discovered so far. But we're on this journey of discovery together because we want to
yeah.
be.
Yeah, I love that. I think, I love, first of all, the idea of, because we can get easily overwhelmed by just the number of sources out there, the headlines, the information around this topic. So really being intentional about, I'm going to really pay attention to these three sources. Now, all the dozens are going to hit my inbox, but I'll really pay attention to these three. I think that's helpful. Having a community of like-minded individuals that you can really work with and brainstorm and kind of rub shoulders with around this work. But this idea too of your internal community. So you asked for volunteers. You have this committee called the Pathfinders, and these are all people within WG Content. I think there's a dozen people on the committee that are all curious and passionate about this about AI. And you've now created sort of little subcommittees. So talk to a little bit about why you did that and what purpose these little subcommittees have.
Well, I made it voluntary for a couple of reasons, but primarily because you can't force the
Right,
technology on people,
right.
especially in these early stages. I mean, what we're looking for are those change agents, the people who
Mhm.
um, aren't afraid to try, or maybe even going to be inspired and feel they're nurtured and enriched by the experience. So let's go
Right,
through that together, and then they become their buy-in helps
hmm,
influence their peers. So it on down the road will help with change management for any solutions we
right.
may choose to go forward with.
Hmm.
Uh, I was excited that we did have so many people who were interested. And because we did, we were able to divide into 4 different groups and really focus on then 4 different things. So we're just getting more momentum quicker than we would have if it was just a few
Hmm.
of us.
Yeah,
Uh, Now, the important thing, these groups they're focusing on pain points, and that's
right.
something in our kickoff meeting
Hmm.
we talked a lot about. You know, AI can be a bit of a shiny object. There's a hype
Hmm.
cycle too, or at least that's the feeling right now.
Hmm.
But there is some real value, and we
Hmm.
have to again narrow our focus in on where that value is. And we also don't want to get discouraged before we even really get started. So the way to do that is incremental. Like,
Right.
yes, there are things that in the future that we can't even imagine right now that we might use AI for, that could maybe change our whole
Mhm.
business model. But for now, let's just look at what's right at our fingertips. What are the tools that we're already using that may be rolling out AI features? What are things that could easily be adopted, but that are chosen because they're fixing a pain point, they're addressing a pain
Right.
point for some small pain point,
Hmm.
some way to save someone in our in our company time,
Right.
gets rid of a mundane task,
Yeah.
things like that. Let's start small and have little wins
Right.
before, and really start to understand what it means to
Mhm.
incorporate AI before we go
Yeah,
big.
I think so smart to think about like, and especially so your committee, is
Mhm.
about a third of our organization or less or something. I mean, that's a pretty good representation. It's across all functions of the business. So you have all voices and brains and minds there in terms of the work that we do. And you started with this question of like, what's gets in your way or what's frustrating or what is a pain point, and we don't even know if AI can solve this, but let's just talk about it. Where do you spend too much time or what seems to bog
Right.
you down? And then let's explore how we
Mhm.
can, introduce these tools to help bring in some efficiencies or whatever the case may be. So I thought that was really smart. So how do you hold everybody accountable to now you've got all these subcommittees and, pathfinders are out and they're on their paths and their journeys. So what is the kind of cadence around holding everyone accountable? And then, um, how do you have fun along the way? I mean, one of our core values is having
Yeah.
fun here. So I know you're very good at introducing and making sure that we're having fun with very big change management strategies. So talk to us a little bit about that too.
All right, loaded questions in there. Let
Yeah,
me.
two parts. Yeah, accountability and fun, right? Those always go together.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah,
they can.
yeah. Spoken, spoken like
So
a
let's see.
salesperson, I guess.
Yeah, let's go back to accountability. How do you do that? I mentioned, the pain points. That's where we have to get formal with the
Mm-hmm.
process. Each group has a business case that they are following, where it outlines almost in like a scientific method sort of way. It's like,
Okay.
here's our pain point. Here's
Mm-hmm.
how we theorize AI could solve it.
Mm-hmm.
Here are some things to start looking at and explore. And here's how we'll know if it's working. That's very important. Because how do you know when to
Right.
say yes, move on, or
Mm-hmm.
no, let's abandon ship? You have to say, what does success look like? So that's
Mm-hmm.
what each team has, is like this guidepost to say, okay, as we explore, does it do this, 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 and this? If not, maybe it's not the solution for us, or at least not for solving this pain point.
Mm-hmm.
If it is, let's move it down the road a little bit, kick it down the road, maybe get a
Mm-hmm.
few more people on board to test it. Because again, the more, as you start to introduce some more people in different roles, different roles within the company and titles. So roles, you get different perspectives, different use cases.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where we're at now. And as I've talked to the team, this isn't their day job, so to speak.
Right.
It's voluntary. And
Mm-hmm.
so the great thing is leadership supports that. So they do give them the space for this exploration, but within the confines of, obviously, client work comes first. So, we can't implement some hard deadlines. And again, we don't really want to, because this is an exploration. I can't say this solution will reveal itself and be finished in 2 weeks. In
Right.
2 weeks, we're gonna see
Right.
how it's going. Does
Mm-hmm.
it still have does it still
Mm-hmm.
have legs? Okay, another 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, another 2 weeks, or no, let's move on to another idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I think that's good. And I know one of the other things that you talked about and you kind of left as homework for us was,
Mhm.
as a leadership team, how do we assess risk? And that's probably a whole nother conversation, but I think
Yeah.
you might be sending us some sort of questionnaire or surveys to help us with
Mhm.
those types of decisions. Anything you want to, any tips that you want to share around how to make, like, how does an organization assess risk? And it doesn't need to be like anything specific, but just things to be thinking about.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there are a couple of key questions that you can think about as leaders, right off the bat. And, you know, that's partly just, what is it you're trying to protect? What
Mhm.
are the greatest assets to your company, and that you need to protect at all costs?
Mhm.
Because once you identify what those are, then you can consider, kind of have to take your mind down to worst case scenario. So
Mhm.
what if that was
Right.
compromised? What would happen? What would happen to the business? Would it cease to be? Would it just
Right.
get a bad reputation, bad press for a little while, but it would
Mhm.
resurrect itself? As you determine all those worst case scenarios and what would happen, that's where you define what we can absolutely have low risk tolerance for versus, okay, the
Yeah.
likelihood of that happening or the impact to the business would be minimal.
Yeah.
So we can take our chances more with something else. And identifying that risk tolerance helps the rest of us, in this case with
Right.
AI Pathfinders. It's another one of those, how do we know when we're succeeding? It becomes another one of those points to say it protects this, or
Mhm.
it matches this level of risk tolerance.
Yeah. And how does it also line up with, I know in our case, we talk a lot about our values as an organization. I mean, certainly, where um, those things need to be reconciled and aligned as we move through these different applications. All right. So we talked about identifying your sources, making sure there's just a few of those and not all of them, finding your tribe, finding a group of people outside your organization, and then having volunteers inside your organization so that you're really working together. Then there's buy-in and some of that with working within a committee. And then you talked about starting with the pain points and then exploring solutions for that. and really just iterating along the way and having fun. I know, you've branded this change management strategy. You've got all of your subcommittees branding their own little strategies or their tools too. So anything else that you'd like to add that you think would be helpful to our friends out there that watch these tips and
Yeah.
tips?
Well, you mentioned fun, Kirsten. And so I have to say, while I say you have to be on one hand serious and formal about it because you want to make sure your work is addressing a real
Yeah.
need or pain point, you also, don't want to waste people's time. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's obviously a thing, but you still want to have a little bit of fun. It can't be
Yeah.
so regimented that
Mm-hmm.
it feels too much like more work.
Right.
Um, that makes sense. I think that's the important part of it being voluntary to
Mm-hmm.
begin with. These are people who are passionate and curious and want to learn about this anyway. So there is an element of fun in that.
Mm-hmm.
And then just, not taking the accountability seriously. If you say you're gonna research this by this date,
Mm-hmm.
do that. You promise
Yeah.
that to the team, but don't take yourself so seriously that you can't admit what you don't know, that you can't laugh
Right.
about something you don't know, that you can't,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
share some of the things that inevitably come up with bad
Right.
prompting and whatnot. And enjoy that laugh about it.
Yeah.
We're all in this together, and that part we can't take ourselves too seriously.
Well, we appreciate you. I appreciate you.
Oh.
And I heard you killed it at the sway debate. So
That was a panel effort. It was
yes,
fun.
panel effort, but a ton of fun. So I really appreciate everything that you do. And we'll be sure to include some of the bullet points from our conversation so that it's helpful for other people. And then certainly if they want to reach out to you, I'm sure you're open to that.
Oh,
Any questions or
absolutely.
conversations that they might have. So thank you again for
Absolutely.
joining us and sharing your expertise.
Get a tip, leave a tip.
There
Come
you
see me.
go. Right. All right. Thanks, Diane.
Have a good one.
Yeah.
Bye.